And welcome back to our 5G Summit on Federal News Network. This panel focusing on 5G in the Department of Defense. With us for one more segment here are Mike Galbraith, the Chief Digital Innovation Officer for the Department of the Navy, Dwayne Florenzi, Senior Strategy Executive in the Office of Commercial and Economic Analysis for the Department of the Air Force, Bong Gumahad, C4ISR Director in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Dan Massey, Program Manager for DoD's 5G Operate Through initiative, and Lance Spencer brings us an industry perspective on all this from AT&T. He is the Client Executive and Vice President for Department of Defense there. The issue of standards development and the fact that in some ways those are still a little bit nascent has come up a couple times throughout the course of this conversation. And Bong, let me turn to you just to kind of wrap us up on the standards piece of this. Give us a quick overview of where the department sees itself playing in that standards development process, since that's still ongoing, and just why it's important for the department to be a player there.
That's a great question, Jared. And as you know, our CIO within the department is taking the lead in engaging with our partners around standards. We'll fully implement our standards engagement plan that's being developed by the CIO, and we'll actively participate in the 3GPP organization for setting the standards. I think it's vital that the DoD and our partners within the government, including the FCC, NTIA, and the NIST, have specific and prioritized outcomes for the engagement, including strengthening U.S. influence in key standards setting organizations and promoting high quality American 5G and beyond technologies. But we are fully engaged and making progress.
Let me pivot a little bit and come back to something I was talking about in the introduction to this panel, which is the fact that in a lot of ways, I think the department is focused not just on the bigger pipes and the lower latency, but the other advanced features and advanced use cases that might come about through 5G. Dwayne, you want to jump on this? To what extent is 5G not just about a networking technology, but maybe an enabler for other kinds of innovation throughout the department?
Yeah, dude, that's great. So you hear me over and over again. 5G is going to be transformational. This is a vision of what's going to become, and so many people are making their evaluation of what 5G is based on 4G, that it's just higher data speed. But last June, the standards came out for the connecting to everything, the Internet of Things, and then the low latency, almost no delay. And those areas are completely transformational. And then when you combine all those things together, we're going to see applications that actually none of us here have even dreamed of yet. And so many people now are still focused on the infrastructure. The infrastructure is important, again, for making sure it's secure and providing a strong foundation. But it's the applications that are going to ride on it that are going to be completely transformational. Just like all the social media on 4G has transformed our country, our innovation, and those companies, it's these applications on top of 5G that are going to be transformational in terms of driving our economy as well as innovation. And that includes drones, robotics, autonomous vehicles, virtual reality, augmented reality, all of these things. That's where we need to spend as much time. And that's, again, where we're trying to move these DoD test beds to have real use cases where we're jumping and accelerating, as Dan has said, these opportunities here with the DoD to drive it across our country, even across our world.
Maybe spend just another beat on that, Dwayne. What, in terms of enabling all of these other use cases, what is it about the 5G technology that makes that possible beyond just the bigger pipes and the lower latency?
Yeah, it's so I say what the killer app is, it's ubiquitous connectivity, because we have a lot of these capabilities actually now in 4G, but they're not connected together. And so as you're able to pull them all together, we have a new capability. And like an example would be manufacturing, where just last year, Mercedes-Benz started developing a 5G factory, all built with 5G, where they have they can change the assembly line according to their needs. Anybody involved with manufacturing knows that's a complex process. But if you don't have everything bolted down, and then on top of that, they're going to have over 300 autonomous vehicles to bring the parts in just in time. And then if there's some issue on the floor, the person on the floor, if they have augmented reality glasses, they can pull up the dashboards and the schematics. And so we've never had the ability to have all of that information. And then with the emergence of artificial intelligence, to actually capture that information, process it, and then make immediate decisions. And so that's where I said it's that ubiquitous connectivity that's the transformational aspect of 5G.
Well, I think Dwayne really nailed it. And, adding to that, operations at the edge, that is a key attribute of 5G that's coming, where you're actually taking workloads and the data to the edge where the operation is happening in many cases. And then that data and that operation moves with you. And that's where examples like the AR/VR autonomy examples that Dwayne gave really become exciting. You think about single millisecond latency, and latency by itself, that's really cool. But combined with edge operations, that's where you do have those driverless vehicles making, millisecond decisions on, do you change lanes? Do you hit the brakes? How do you apply that to military use cases? Drones. Warehousing is an example being worked through one of the existing tranches, AR/VR, like Dwayne mentioned. Bringing that to the operational edge is going to really dynamically change in the 5G environment.
Yeah, I agree with Lance there, and don't want to dive in too deep here, but just when you look at what putting a plane on the deck of a ship did to the tactics of warfare, take that times 10, and that's what 5G gets you. But even just simple use cases to drive off of Dwayne's comments, sea lift maintenance between ships. 5G is going to enable a new way to do that with automation as well as just simple communication. Same with working with an air wing on a coalition partner's aircraft carrier. 5G will enable a different way to collaborate and communicate and put C2 in place. So the innovation and the capabilities that brings are endless. It's what you can dream up. And again, just not to, I think Dwayne really put some good things in order for us in terms of working with the DIB and our industry partners. The economic benefits of that are tremendous to the country, but the innovation that's going to come out of those industry partners, working with academia, working with our innovation cells in DoD, it is just really something exciting that our country hasn't seen in a long time.
For me, Jared, and kind of just harking on what Lance said, it's really the utility of 5G to the tactical edge, as we talked about, because that is directly in concert with our national defense strategy of lethality being the top LOE. So with 5G being transformative, I see a lot of benefits to the tactical edge, especially when you're talking about massive amounts of data coming in and having to process all that with almost zero latency. So I think the operational edge, tactical utility, is what I see as transformative from a 5G standpoint.
And just to kind of round that out, I think really we've touched on sort of what I see as three incredibly critical, transformative aspects of 5G. As Dwayne started off with, ubiquitous computing, right? We now have, so ubiquitous networking. We now have ubiquitous networking where effectively devices are connected all the time, anywhere in the world. That really changes the way we think about how IoT devices operate, how our critical infrastructure operates, how our tactical response is going to operate. So ubiquitous connectivity is a huge game changer, matched with low cost embedded processing at the edge, as Lance and Mike and Bong have also pointed out, right? By able to move incredibly powerful computing resources very close to the edge, that also changes the game as to what I can do. I can now do that autonomous driving with the, and that can affect my supply convoy within the DoD as well as my personal car driving home today. So we've got ubiquitous connectivity, we've got edge computing, and then finally we've got data analytics, right? And I think the data analytics also come into play, and it was also mentioned here as well. When you combine those three, we have truly transformative ways, and I don't think we can fully predict all the applications that are going to emerge from 5G. I think I think we know it's really going to transform the way we do a lot of things, and I expect to be surprised by a few applications where I never thought that would have occurred. Just as I would imagine, in the early days of the ARPANET, it would be hard to predict all the applications that are out there now. I think similar, if we come back, if we revisit this panel 10 years from now, I expect that a few of the things I thought would happen will definitely happen, and I imagine there's a few things that I never would have predicted myself, but those innovative companies and those innovative ideas will come up with.
Dan's point's a great one, that the intersection of these technologies, the convergence points, are the real game changers in and of themselves. 5G, it's just another transport, right? Data analytics, it's just data. It's a new way to look at data. Edge computing, the harvesting of sensor information alone, they don't do anything. They are truly game changers and exponential step changes when they come together. Whether tactically to improve lethality and warfare tactics, or where you can bring an AI and an algorithm to the data on the battlefield. That is game changing from that tactical edge, all the way in between back to our bases. So from foxhole to flagpole, we've got really good capabilities as these cloud capabilities, our data analytics capabilities, our transport capabilities all begin to intersect. Those are the game-changing things for us.
Down to about our last 4 or 5 minutes here, and I don't want to leave this discussion without tackling at least a bit the culture and the people piece of the implications of everything that we've been discussing today. I mean, Dan's obviously right. We can't predict what all the applications on the network are going to be 5 years from now, but I think it's pretty fair to say that if everything that we've been talking about comes to fruition, the network itself, the IT environment, is going to look very different than the one that the workforce is operating, defending, and sustaining today. So how are you thinking about that right now in terms of the numbers of people and the types of skills that they're going to need to work in this world?
I'll start that one off. So I'm particularly interested in security aspects of 5G. And that's an incredibly challenging area for the workforce. Right? So, it's well known that we have issues with the cybersecurity workforce and massive shortages across both government and industry in terms of qualified cybersecurity experts and both experts and entry-level operators. So cybersecurity itself is already a workforce challenge. 5G and 5G networking is equally an interesting challenge, right? We don't have enough engineers who fully understand all the implications of 5G, as was just pointed out. We need engineers who understand edge computing and radio access networks and core networking to get the packets back on a wired network, and that's a complex set. So we've got a shortage of 5G people in the workforce. We've got a shortage of cybersecurity people in the workforce, and I'm looking for 5G cybersecurity people, which is even worse. So I think it's a real challenge, and this is part of what we're trying to address. But I think we need to be looking at all ranges of options, from leveraging our veterans who often have some of these skills as they come out of the service, to looking all the way back into our K through 12 system and seeing what can we do to get kids interested in this, because there's some great careers here for those who want to work in this space. So not so much a solution, but an emphasis that it's an open challenge.
One other thing to think about is, it's definitely a high demand resource that, just like Dan said, public and private entities are all trying to recruit out of that same emerging base of expertise. I think it's really important to work together as we're progressing and think about what roles does the Department of Defense need to fill in this ecosystem, and define and tune that demand function within the Department of Defense against where can they look to somebody like AT&T to fill roles that maybe traditionally have not been roles. And I'm not talking staff augmentation, but I'm talking, as we bring capabilities to bear, how does the expertise that we've recruited and hired and developed offset requirements that DoD may have traditionally sourced in the past? And so how do we come up with that model together to think about how that might help us all be successful as we go forward?
There's more than just the quantifiable workforce component, the operators, right? There's a cultural change that you brought up, Jared, that I know that we're wrestling with in the Department of the Navy and beginning to make some inroads, but leading these new emerging technology areas and adapting the traditional and prizing the traditional leadership is starting to change. Cybersecurity certificates, 5G certificates, majors in the Naval Academy around IT and cybersecurity, so that leadership begins to prize that information warfare environment and that cyber environment. That's part of that change as well, not just the mass workforce. That's another component that we need to deal with as military departments.
So I'm an example of actually how the DoD is reaching out. So I came back to the Air Force a couple of years ago from industry, in the telecom industry. So I've had bringing that type of experience back to the Air Force where it came from. But then and another thing is I'm based here in San Jose, California. So I'm in Silicon Valley. And what I've been very impressed with in these last couple of years since I've been back is to see how all of the services are actively engaged with startup companies. And so they all have programs to try to pull in the expertise from these startups. And if you go back to the message earlier about all of these advanced technologies are going to ride on 5G, we can't do them all. We need to pull in the experts and the innovators. And I think that's where we're going to capture some of this innovation, is if we tap into the startup companies and some of the true innovators in our country.
It's a great place to leave it. And unfortunately, we do have to leave it there just because of time. That was Dwayne Florenzi, the Senior Strategy Executive at the Office of Commercial and Economic Analysis for the Secretary of the Air Force. Also with us, Mike Galbraith, Chief Digital Innovation Officer at the Department of the Navy. Bong Gumahad, the C4ISR Director at the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. Dan Massey, the 5G Operate Through Program Manager at DoD. And Lance Spencer, Client Executive and Vice President for DoD at AT&T. Gentlemen, thank you all for taking the time. It was a really great discussion. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm your moderator, Jared Serbu, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search AT&T.